The shuttle landed on station with a soft hiss, pressed her face against the window, and looked at the massive space station floating in the darkness. It was bigger than any city she had ever seen. Lights blinked across its surface like stars that had fallen from the sky and decided to stay. She was 12 years old. She was also the youngest human ever accepted into the Galactic Coalition Military Academy. Her hands were shaking a little, but she kept them hidden in her lap. She did not want anyone to see that she was scared. The man sitting next to her noticed anyway, always noticed everything. He was 34 years old, with short black hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. There was a scar running from his left eyebrow down to his cheek. His eyes were dark and calm, like deep water that hid dangerous things beneath the surface. "You ready?" he asked. His voice was low and quiet. Nodded, "I think so." "Good." He stood up and grabbed their bags. "Stay close to me. Don't talk to anyone unless you have to, and if anyone touches you, tell me immediately." Had known for only 3 weeks, but she had already learned that he was not a man who wasted words. Her father, Admiral, had chosen him personally to be her guardian during her time at the academy. When she asked why, her father had simply said, "Because is the most dangerous man I have ever met, and he owes me his life." She had looked up military record later. Most of it was classified, hidden behind walls of digital security. But she found enough to understand why aliens across 6-star systems called him by a strange nickname. The Honey Badger. The name came from an incident on a planet called Prime, had been part of a peacekeeping mission when his unit was ambushed. 11 soldiers surrounded him. His weapons had failed. His communications were dead. He was alone. The official report said that killed all 11 of them using only his hands, his feet, and his teeth. One of the soldiers had thick armor covering his throat, bit through it. When the rescue team found him, he was sitting among the bodies, covered in blood that was not his own. He was eating a ration bar like nothing had happened. Honey badgers, had learned, were small animals from Earth. They were famous for being completely fearless. They would attack lions. They would fight snakes. They never backed down, no matter how big or dangerous their enemy was. They did not care about pain. They did not care about death. They just kept fighting until they won or until their hearts stopped beating. Looking at now, thought the nickname fit him perfectly. They walked off the shuttle and into the station's arrival hall. The ceiling was so high they could not see where it ended. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved around them. Some had scales, some had fur, some had too many arms, some had no arms at all. The air smelled strange, like metal and flowers and something she could not name. A group of walked past them. They were tall, almost 7 feet, with gray-green scales covering their bodies and 4 muscular arms. Their eyes were yellow with black slits in the center. They looked at the way someone might look at an insect that had crawled onto their food. His hand moved to his shoulder, gentle but firm. He guided her forward without saying anything. They reached the academy registration desk. The alien behind it had blue skin and tentacles where a human would have hair. She looked at with obvious surprise. "A human child," the alien said. Her voice sounded like water flowing over rocks. "I did not believe the reports." "Cadet reporting for integration," said. His voice was flat, showing no emotion. "Her documents are in order." The alien checked her screen. "Yes, everything seems correct. She will be assigned to Training Unit 7. Her quarters are in Block D." She paused and looked at. "And you are her guardian?" "Yes." "You understand that you cannot interfere with academy training. Your clearance allows you to observe only. Any violation will result in immediate arrest and possible diplomatic consequences." His expression did not change. "I understand." The alien handed them 2 small cards. "Welcome to station. Try not to cause any trouble." They walked through long corridors until they reached Block D's. Room was small and cold. The bed was designed for aliens with different bodies, and she knew sleeping on it would be uncomfortable. The walls were bare gray metal. There was no window. Checked every corner of the room. He looked under the bed. He examined the ventilation system. He tested the door lock 3 times. "My room is next door," he said when he was satisfied. "If anything happens, you hit this button." He showed her a small device that looked like a bracelet. "I will be there in less than 10 seconds. Put on the bracelet. Why do they hate us so much?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down on the edge of her bed, which creaked under his weight. "Humans joined the coalition only 50 years ago," he said. "To them, we are newcomers, outsiders. Some of them remember when humans were still fighting each other on Earth. They think we are violent, primitive, dangerous." "Are we?" Looked at her with those deep, dark eyes. "Yes, we are all of those things, but we are also loyal. We protect our families. We protect our children. We never give up no matter how hard things get." He paused. "That is why they really fear us, not because we are violent, but because we never stop." He stood up and walked to the door. "Get some rest. Training starts tomorrow. It will not be easy." Called out before he left. He turned. "Thank you for being here." For a moment, something soft flickered across his hard face. It was gone so fast that was not sure she had really seen it. "Your father saved my life," he said. "I am just paying my debt." He left, and the door closed behind him with a soft click. Lay down on the uncomfortable bed and stared at the ceiling. She thought about her father, far away on Earth. She thought about her mother, who had died when she was small. She thought about all the aliens who had looked at her with disgust and hatred. She was scared, she was lonely, but she was also determined. She would show them. She would show all of them what humans could do. Outside her door stood in the empty corridor. His eyes moved slowly across the shadows. His body was relaxed, but his mind was alert. He had seen how the aliens looked at. He had heard the whispers. He knew what was coming. They thought she was weak. They thought he was just a babysitter. They were wrong. The first week was hard. The second week was worse. By the third week, understood that the academy did not want her to succeed. They wanted her to break. Training started every morning at 5. The alien cadets woke up easily because their bodies needed less sleep. Had to drag herself out of bed while her muscles screamed in pain. She was always the last one to arrive at formation. Senior instructor made sure everyone noticed. Was a 7 feet tall with 4 powerful arms and scales the color of dried blood. His yellow eyes seemed to burn with hatred whenever he looked at. He never called her by name. He called her the human, or the creature, or sometimes just it. "The human is late again," he would announce to the entire training unit. "Perhaps its weak body cannot handle real training. Perhaps it should go back to its dirty little planet." The other cadets laughed. Some of them made sounds that did not understand, but she knew they were insults. She kept her head down and said nothing. She had promised her father that she would not cause trouble. But the hazing did not stop with words. Her equipment started disappearing. Her training uniform would vanish from her locker. Her data pad would be cracked when she found it. Her water bottle would be filled with something that smelled like poison. The first time she drank from it without checking, she spent 6 hours in the medical bay, vomiting until her stomach was empty and her throat was raw. The medical officer, a bored-looking alien with too many eyes, recorded the incident as accidental food sensitivity. Knew it was not an accident. She knew who had done it. But when she tried to report it, Instructor told her that humans were known for making false accusations. "Your species lies as easily as it breathes," he said, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. "Do not waste my time with your stories." Was always watching. He stood in the corners of training halls, leaned against walls in corridors, sat quietly in observation areas during exercises. His dark eyes missed nothing. Every night, he wrote reports and sent them through encrypted channels to Admiral and to the Human Coalition Embassy. The responses were always the same. Maintain diplomatic patience. This integration program is important for human-alien relations. We cannot afford an incident. Document everything but do not interfere. Read those messages with a tight jaw. His hands would curl into fists. Then he would take a deep breath and force himself to relax. He knew how politics worked. He knew that was not just a student. She was a symbol. The first human child in an alien military academy. If she succeeded, it would open doors for other humans. If she failed, or if there was a scandal, those doors would close for generations. But knowing this did not make it easier to watch. One evening knocked on his door. There was no answer. He knocked again, still nothing. He used his security override to open the door. Was sitting on her bed, her back against the wall. Her uniform sleeves were rolled up. Angry red burns covered both her arms, stretching from her wrists to her elbows. She was trying to apply medical cream with shaking hands, but she could not hold the tube properly. Crossed the room in 3 steps. He took the tube from her and knelt down in front of her. What happened? His voice was calm, but there was something cold underneath it, something dangerous. Correction punishment, said. She did not look at him. During tactical training, I asked a question about the exercise. Instructor said I was being insubordinate. He made me hold the correction bars. The correction bars were metal poles charged with low-level electricity. They were meant to be held for a few seconds as a warning. Burns told that she had been forced to hold them for much longer. How long? He asked as he carefully applied the cream to her damaged skin. I do not know, 20 minutes, maybe more. Her voice was flat, empty. He said humans need extra correction because we are slow learners. Said nothing. He finished treating her burns and wrapped her arms in clean bandages. His movements were gentle, but his eyes were not. They were hard and cold, like ice covering a frozen lake. I can handle it, said suddenly. Her voice cracked just a little. My dad said this was important for all humans. I cannot mess it up. I cannot be the reason they hate us more. Waited until she looked at him. You are 12 years old. You are a child. No mission is worth your suffering. But my dad. Your father wants you to succeed. He does not want you to be tortured. His voice softened just slightly. There are lines that should never be crossed. When someone crosses them, they face consequences. That is how the universe should work. His eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. They want me to quit. They want me to run away crying like a weak little human. I will not give them that. Looked at this small, brave girl with her bandaged arms and her stubborn face. He thought about all the soldiers he had served with, big men and women who had broken under less pressure, was stronger than any of them. No, he agreed, you will not. He stood up, get some sleep, tomorrow will be hard. Every day is hard, said with a small, tired smile. Then you are getting stronger every day. He left her room and walked to his own quarters. He sat on his bed and stared at the wall for a long time. His burned cream-stained hands were steady, but inside something was churning, something old, something hungry. He had made a promise to Admiral. He had made a promise to the diplomatic officials. He had agreed to watch and document and not interfere. But there was another promise, older and deeper, that he had made to himself many years ago. He had made it over the bodies of dead friends and lost battles. He had made it in blood and fire and pain. He would never let the innocent suffer when he had the power to stop it. Opened his personal storage locker. Inside was his old combat knife, the one he had carried through 20 campaigns. Its blade was dark and worn. It had tasted blood many times. He did not take it out, not yet. But he left the locker unlocked. Because knew what politicians and diplomats did not understand. Some situations could not be solved with patience. Some enemies did not respond to words. Some monsters only understood one language, and spoke that language fluently. He lay down on his bed and closed his eyes. He did not sleep. He listened. He waited. Across the station, Instructor was laughing with other officers, telling them about how the human creature had cried during correction. They raised their drinks and toasted to keeping the vermin in their place. None of them knew that a honey badger was watching, waiting. The practical examination was scheduled for the end of the training cycle. Every cadet had to demonstrate their defensive combat skills in the central arena. They would face an instructor in controlled combat. It was supposed to be a test, not a fight. The instructors were supposed to attack at reduced strength, giving cadets a chance to show what they had learned. Had trained hard for this moment. Despite all the sabotage, despite the burns and the poison and the cruelty, she had studied every combat manual she could find. She had practiced her forms alone in her room, late at night, when the other cadets were sleeping. She had asked to teach her basic human self-defense, and he had shown her techniques that were not in any manual. Aliens have different bodies, he had explained, different weak points. Eyes are almost always vulnerable, joints can be broken, throats can be crushed. He showed her where to strike, where to grab, where to twist. You are small, you are weak, but you are also fast and smart, use that. On the day of the examination, woke up before dawn. Her stomach was tight with nerves. She dressed in her training uniform, the one she had to repair 3 times because someone kept tearing it. She wrapped her still-healing arms carefully. She looked at herself in the small mirror. "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection. "You are not weak, you are human." The arena was massive, a circular space surrounded by rising seats filled with cadets, instructors, and academy officials. The floor was smooth metal, marked with training circles. Powerful lights hung from the ceiling, casting everything in harsh white light. Took her place with the other cadets. There were 20 of them in Training Unit 7. She was the smallest by far. The alien cadets around her whispered and pointed. Some laughed. One by one, the cadets stepped forward for their examinations. Each faced an instructor in the central circle. The combat was controlled, careful. The instructors attacked slowly, giving the cadets time to demonstrate their blocks and counters. Most cadets passed without difficulty. Then's name was called. She walked to the central circle, her heart pounding in her chest. She tried to keep her breathing steady. She looked around for and found him standing at the edge of the arena near a security barrier. His face was calm, but his eyes were fixed on her with complete attention. Instructor stepped into the circle across from her. His blood went cold. Normally, a lower-level instructor would conduct cadet examinations. Senior instructors only participated in advanced tests. There was no reason for to be here. But there he was, all 7 feet of him, with his 4 arms and his yellow eyes and his cruel smile. In one of his hands, he held a shock rod. The weapon hummed with electrical energy. "The human will demonstrate its defensive skills against me personally," announced. His voice echoed through the silent arena. "I wish to evaluate its capabilities." Heard murmurs from the crowd. Some cadets looked uncomfortable. Others leaned forward with eager anticipation. Moved closer to the security barrier. The barrier was designed to keep observers out of the training area. It was made of energy fields and reinforced metal. Breaking through, it would require heavy weapons or incredible strength. Or incredible desperation. In the circle, raised his shock rod. Defensive stance human. Raised her arms, her feet planted in the basic defensive position she had practiced 1,000 times. Her hands were shaking slightly, but she forced them to be still. Did not give a warning. He did not follow the proper examination procedure. He just swung the shock rod directly at her ribs with full force. The impact sent flying backward. She hit the ground hard, her body convulsing as electricity tore through her muscles. Pain exploded across her chest. She could not breathe. She could not think. Everything was white fire and agony. "Get up," commanded. "A warrior does not lie on the ground." tried to move. Her arms would not respond. Her legs felt like they were made of water, but somehow she pushed herself up to her knees, then to her feet. She swayed but did not fall. Smiled, it was not a nice smile. Good, the creature has some spirit. He raised the shock rod again. Let us see how long it lasts. The second strike hit her back as she tried to turn away. She screamed. She could not help it. The pain was too much. She fell forward onto her hands and knees, her whole body shaking. In the observation area's hands were pressed flat against the security barrier. His knuckles were white. His jaw was clenched so tight that his teeth ached. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to fight, to protect. But the barrier was there. The rules were there. The consequences were there. If he interfered, he would be arrested, court-martialed, imprisoned. It could start a diplomatic crisis. It could undo everything that humans had worked for. Tried to stand again. She got one foot under her, then the other. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, but she was still trying to get up. Laughed, it was an ugly sound. Humans are such entertaining creatures, he said loudly, playing to the crowd. They keep struggling even when they are already broken, like insects that do not know they are dead. He adjusted something on the shock rod. The humming grew louder. The light at the tip glowed brighter. He had increased the power setting far beyond what was safe for training. Perhaps this will teach your entire species its place, said. Perhaps when they find what is left of you, they will finally understand that humans do not belong among us. He raised the shock rod high, preparing to bring it down on its head, and looked toward. She did not call for help. She did not beg him to save her. She just looked at him, this 12-year-old girl with her burned arms and her tear-streaked face and her unbroken spirit. She looked at him like she wanted someone to see her, to remember her, to know that she had tried her best. Something inside broke. Or maybe something woke up. Something old. Something that had been sleeping since prime, since he had sat among dead bodies and realized that he had become something more than human. Something that could not be contained by barriers or rules or consequences. The honey badger opened its eyes. And it was very, very hungry. Began to swing the shock rod down. Moved. There was a gap in the security barrier where a maintenance panel connected to the main structure. It was barely a foot wide. To fit through it, a person would have to dislocate their own shoulder. Did not hesitate, never saw him coming. One moment, the instructor was swinging his shock rod towards head, savoring his victory over the weak human child. The next moment, something slammed into him from the side with the force of a missile. Hit at full speed, his dislocated shoulder screaming in protest. He did not care about the pain. Pain was just information. Pain told you that you were still alive and still fighting. Pain was a friend. The shock rod changed direction, swinging toward instead. He saw it coming. He did not dodge. He reached out and caught the electrified weapon with his bare left hand. The electricity tore through his palm. He could smell his own flesh cooking. He could feel the energy burning through his nerves, trying to lock his muscles, trying to make him fall, but had been shocked before. He had been burned and cut and broken. He had learned long ago that the human body could endure far more than the human mind wanted to believe. He wrapped his fingers around the shaft of the shock rod and held on. His yellow eyes went wide with shock. "What are you?" Did not answer with words. He grabbed the shock rod with his right hand as well and pulled it toward his face. Then he did something that made everyone in the arena freeze in disbelief. He bit down on the metal housing where the power cell connected to the weapon. Human jaw muscles are surprisingly powerful. Most people never discover this because their brains prevent them from biting at full strength. The brain protects the teeth, protects the jaw joint, prevents damage. But when adrenaline floods the system and the brain's safety controls shut down, a human can generate over 160 pounds of pressure per square inch with their bite. Spite generated far more than that. His teeth punched through the metal casing like it was made of plastic. Sparks exploded around his face. The taste of copper and electricity filled his mouth. He felt a tooth crack, felt blood running down his chin, but he did not stop. He bit harder, deeper, tearing through wires and circuits. The shock rod died with a high-pitched whine. The humming stopped. The light at the tip flickered and went dark. Spat out a mouthful of metal and blood. He looked at with eyes that held no humanity in them, only cold, calculating hunger. Stumbled backward, his 4 arms raised in defense. He was a trained warrior. He had fought in real battles, but he had never seen anything like this. He had never faced something that would bite through metal to get to him. "You cannot do this," said. His voice was shaking. "This is a violation of diplomatic protocol. You will be arrested. Your species will face consequences." Stepped forward. His left hand was a ruined mess of burned flesh, still smoking slightly. His right shoulder hung at a wrong angle where he had dislocated it to fit through the barrier gap. Blood dripped from his mouth onto the arena floor. He looked like a nightmare wearing human skin. "She is 12 years old," said. His voice was calm, quiet, completely flat. That made it somehow worse than screaming. Tried to back away further, but was faster. One moment he was 3 steps away. The next moment he was right in front of the giant alien, moving with a speed that should have been impossible for someone so injured. He kicked his primary knee. The joint bent the wrong way with a sound like breaking wood. The instructor howled in pain and fell. Before could hit the ground, his burned hand wrapped around his throat. The alien was twice his size, but lifted him slightly, just enough to make sure they were looking into each other's eyes. The arena was completely silent. 40 alien cadets sat frozen in their seats. 6 other instructors stood at the edges of the circle, their hands on their weapons, but none of them moved. They did not know what to do. They had never seen a human like this. They had heard the stories about the honey badger. They had laughed at them. They had called them exaggerations, propaganda, lies. They were not laughing now. Squeezed throat, not enough to kill, just enough to make sure the alien could not speak, could not look away, could not do anything except listen. "Touch her again," whispered. His voice was soft, almost gentle. It was the most terrifying sound anyone in that arena had ever heard. "Look at her wrong again, think about hurting her again." He paused. "And I will eat your hearts, all 3 of them, while you watch." Made a choking sound. Whether it was from the hand on his throat or from pure terror, no one could tell. Held him there for another long moment. Then he released his grip and let the instructor fall to the ground. Crumpled like a puppet with cut strings, clutching his destroyed knee, gasping for air. Turned away from him like he was already forgotten. He walked to where lay on the arena floor, still trembling from the electrical shocks. He knelt down beside her and carefully, gently, gathered her small body in his arms. "I have you," he said quietly. "You are safe now." Looked up at him with wide eyes. She saw the blood on his face, the burns on his hand, the strange angle of his shoulder. She saw what he had done for her, what he had sacrificed. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You will get in trouble. I know. They might hurt you. They might put you in prison. I know." Tears spilled down her cheeks. Why did you do it?" Looked at her for a long moment. Then, for the first time since she had met him, he smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was real. "Because that is what humans do," he said. "We protect our children." He stood up, holding her carefully in his arms, and began walking toward the arena exit. His body was broken in 6 ways. Every step sent waves of pain through his system. But he walked steadily, his back straight, his eyes forward. The crowd parted before him like water before a ship. Aliens pressed themselves against the walls. Instructors stepped aside. No one tried to stop him. No one dared. because they had finally seen what a human was capable of when someone threatened their young. And they were terrified, remained on the arena floor, broken and bleeding, surrounded by the silence of 40 witnesses. He had wanted to teach the humans their place. Instead, the honey badger had taught him his. The lesson would not be forgotten. Behind, as he carried through the corridors of station, whispers began to spread. Within hours, the story would reach every corner of the station. Within days, it would travel to other worlds. The tale of the human who bit through metal and broke a warrior to protect a 12-year-old girl. Some would call it madness. Others would call it barbarism. The diplomatic aftermath began within hours. Messages flew between embassies. Emergency meetings were called. Politicians and military officials on 12 different worlds woke up to urgent notifications about an incident at station. The government was furious. They demanded immediate punishment for the human who had attacked one of their senior military instructors. They called it an act of war. They called it proof that humans were savages who could not be trusted. They wanted executed publicly as an example. The human coalition responded with their own demands. They released documentation, months of recorded abuse, medical reports showing injuries, official complaints that had been ignored or dismissed. They showed the video from the arena examination, the moment when raised a potentially lethal weapon against a 12-year-old child. The story spread across the galactic news networks. Alien commentators debated. Some supported the others, surprisingly, spoke in defense of the human guardian. A few even admitted that they would have done the same thing if someone had threatened their own children. Spent 3 days in a medical facility, under guard but receiving treatment. Doctors repaired his dislocated shoulder and treated the severe burns on his hand. They cleaned the wounds in his mouth where he had cracked 2 teeth biting through metal. They gave him enough painkillers to knock out a large alien, but stayed awake and alert. He asked about constantly. The guards would not tell him anything. Recovered faster than anyone expected. Her body was young and strong, and the electrical burns healed quickly with proper medical treatment. But she refused to rest. She demanded to see. She demanded to speak to her father. She demanded to know what was happening. Admiral arrived at station on the 4th day. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars and negotiated a dozen peace treaties. He had seen terrible things and made difficult choices. But when he walked into his daughter's hospital room and saw her lying in that bed, something in his face cracked. "Dad," said, she tried to sit up, wincing at the pain. "I am sorry. I did not mean to cause trouble." Crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her. He held her carefully, gently, like she was made of glass. For a long moment he did not speak. When he finally pulled back, there were tears in his eyes. "You have nothing to apologize for," he said. "Nothing." "But I know," wiped his eyes and forced himself to be calm. "I am handling it." The tribunal was held 1 week later in the Coalition Council chambers. Representatives from 50 different species filled the observation galleries. This was more than just a military hearing. It was a statement about humanity's place in the galactic community. Stood alone in the center of the chamber, still healing from his injuries. His left hand was wrapped in regeneration mesh. His shoulder was in a support brace. But he stood straight and steady, his eyes meeting everyone who looked at him. The charges were read aloud. Assault on a coalition military officer, destruction of property, violation of diplomatic protocol, interference with academy operations. The maximum sentence was 20 years in a penal colony. Listened without expression. He did not deny anything. He did not try to excuse his actions. "I would do it again," he said when asked if he had anything to say in his defense. "Every time, without hesitation." The representatives shouted in outrage. The presiding officials called for order. Then the human coalition presented their evidence. Hours of footage showing the systematic abuse had suffered, medical records documenting her injuries, testimony from the few alien cadets who had found the courage to tell the truth about what had happened, the official reports that had been ignored or buried. And finally, the examination footage. The moment when a senior instructor raised a weapon set to dangerous levels against a 12-year-old girl whose only crime was being human. The chamber went quiet. The presiding officer was an alien named, actually, a human admiral who had earned her position through decades of service. She had 3 children of her own, 2 sons and a daughter. The youngest was 11 years old. She watched the footage with a face like stone. Then she spoke directly to the representatives. "Your government has demanded punishment for this man's actions," she said. "But I have seen no demands for investigation into the conduct of your instructor. I have seen no accountability for the months of abuse suffered by a child under your care." The diplomats tried to respond, but raised her hand. "The coalition charter is clear. Military instructors are forbidden from using excessive force against cadets. They are absolutely forbidden from raising potentially lethal weapons against minors in non-combat situations." She paused. "Your instructor violated both of these rules. The evidence is undeniable." She turned to face the full council. "The question before us is simple. What kind of galaxy do we want to live in? One where children can be abused without consequence. One where those who protect children are punished for their loyalty." The council deliberated for 6 hours. Representatives argued. Deals were made in private rooms. Political calculations were weighed against public opinion. Finally, the verdict was announced. All charges against were dismissed on grounds of justifiable protection of a minor under clear and present threat. Instructor was stripped of his rank and sentenced to 7 years in a penal colony for abuse of power and endangerment of a minor. Added a personal note to the official record. Her words would be quoted across the galaxy for years to come. The Galactic Coalition wished to see what humans are made of. Now they know. They protect their children, all of them, no matter the cost. 3 months later, returned to the academy. It was her choice. Her father had offered to bring her home to let her study somewhere safe. She refused. "If I leave now, they win," she said. "I am not going to let them win." Remained her guardian. His hand had healed, though it carried scars that would never fade. He said he did not mind. Some scars were worth keeping. The other cadets treated differently now. The harassment stopped completely. Some cadets ignored her, but others began to talk to her cautiously, like people approaching something they did not fully understand. One day, a young cadet named approached in the training yard. She was smaller than most of her species, with silver-gray fur and nervous eyes. "Can I ask you something?" said quietly. "Why did your guardian do what he did? He nearly started a war for one child." Thought about the question for a moment. She thought about biting through metal. She thought about her father crying when he saw her in the hospital. She thought about all the humans who had sent messages of support from across the galaxy. Then she smiled. "Because that is what humans do," she said. "We protect our kids, all of them, no matter what." Considered this. Her silver eyes were wide. "Your species is terrifying. Only if you threaten the wrong people." Across the training yard, leaned against a wall, arms crossed, watching. His hand caught the light from the station's artificial sun. His dark eyes moved slowly across the yard, checking for threats, nodding every shadow. He was still watching. He would always be watching. Because that was what honey badgers did. And if anyone ever threatened his little girl again, they would learn the same lesson had learned. Some lines should never be crossed. And some guardians never stopped protecting their own. The humans would call it something else. They would call it family. The crack of bone was lost in the chaos that followed. And honey badgers never forgot. and if any of them touched that little girl, they would learn exactly why the galaxy called him the honey badger.